Hi, everyone. This is a throwback to before I became uh, informed about Paul or was really even an in-depth student of the Word. Back in 1998, I'm living in a foreign country which we speak Spanish every day. And so I was starting to read the Reina Valera Bible from 1605, 1909. It was in this, I think it was in the same Bible at that time. And you could read either one, and then I had the King James, I had the NIV, I had all these four with me. We're living in this foreign country, and I started realizing these people didn't have the same Bible doctrines. They were taking James very seriously, that you could save by faith. You couldn't be saved by faith without works. And then I decided, you know what, maybe I mean, reading in Spanish, let me start doing my Spanish work. And I also had studied Greek in high school, so I could do some background checks. So I actually started to realize the Reina Valera translation is superior to that of King James and the NIV. And then I'm going to give you, at the time, this is back from 1998, and I just resurrected this PowerPoint I made that at that time. I did a little rewriting of this a couple years ago, but anyway, so we'll see if you agree at some of these changes. Yes, and the other thing is I then make a comparison to the American Standard Version, the ASV of 1901, to both the King James and NIV, and I find it superior. And you'll see I do a statistical study just of the sample of the 10 or so verses I was looking at. And you have to know that I was doing with my wife missionary work, and I would be told by North Americans that they were being criticized by Hispanics that our quotes or whatever references to the Bible were not consistent. So many English-speaking missionaries expressed their frustration to me that certain doctrines they hold dear were not being accepted, particularly the doctrine of faith alone. And this was the Assembly of God Church from the United States sending someone down to be a pastor and finding out he and his wife have moved for nothing because they're ordering him back out. They don't want him because he's teaching this faith alone doctrine. I'm like, oh, wow, what is this? What could explain why these people think so differently? So I decided to see, is it in the scripture? And yes, it was. So they tried to claim, these English-speaking missionaries were trying to say the KJV or the NIV are superior to the Reina Valera, and these people aren't taking it. Now, just so you know who Valera was, he was a Christian. He went to Geneva. He got permission to make his own Spanish translation. Obviously, they couldn't control his content or what he was actually saying, but they permitted it, and it was printed under the Geneva Press. And but he did not seem to be. He had the accurate tense. And let me just say this: the reason his is more accurate is following the tenses of the Greek, because that complexity of tense is as well defined in Spanish as it is in Greek. But in English, it's very hard to know whether you're using, for example, the present tense in an indicative way, meaning some sort of continuous action, or it's just simply an action in the past or the immediate present. So English does not have the refinement of the meanings of other tenses and other classical Romance type of languages. So my ultimate conclusion was the most faithful translation was the Reina Valera of 1909, 1960. Both were equally good. Okay, so just so you see what we're going to do, we're going to look in slides 4 to 7 at the errors in the NIV that do not exist in the Reina Valera. We're going to then look in slides 8 to 14, the errors in the King James and NIV that do not exist in the Reina Valera. In the third slide series, we'll have if the RVA, the Reina Valera, is in error, so is the NIV and KJV, so they share a common error history. But I will show in English the American Standard 1901 is the most faithful translation from the Greek. And I'll give you the verses cited at the end. Okay. So here are the only verses I was looking at. And you can see at this time I'm fully accepting Paul. I'm just going through 3 of his passages, but I have here 1 from Luke and 4 from the book of John. Let's look at NIV. Ephesians 2, 8, 9. That's the famous, you're saved by faith, not by works, blah, blah, blah. So the Greek says you are being saved by faith by using the present indicative tense. The NIV incorrectly translates this with the past tense. You, quote, you have been saved by grace. What about the RVA, the Reina Valera? 1909, 1960, both say Reina Valera has its sois salvos, the present tense, like in the Greek. Same meaning. So, yeah, NIV, wrong. Okay, so the NIV of John 3:16. In the Greek, it says, quote, may not perish by using the present subjunctive tense. The KJV is accurate and says should not, you should not perish. But the NIV adds certitude by using the future tense. You shall not perish. It makes a big difference. Are you automatic or you should not perish? Absent a change of course. John 3:16 is in the Reina Valera is now the Greek is a present subjunctive for perish, and then is correctly translated in the RVA by using the present subjunctive in Spanish, no se pierda. Okay, so now let's look at the NIV again. In Luke 8:14, in the Greek, it says, the seed choked by life's worries does not, quote, produce ripe fruit, which reflects significant growth preceded its death. However, the NIV says they do not mature, suggesting maybe there was never any growth. If we go over to the Reina Valera, 1909, 1960, Luke 8:14, the RVA keeps the Greek imagery of not reaching the final stage of bearing fruit, no llevan fruto. Thus, the RVA literally renders the Greek, while the NIV abstracts a meaning that allows ambiguous interpretations. And by the way, the message about the seed is really somebody who's had growth, gets choked by the cares and worries of this world, and then doesn't produce fruit. So you have to have had some growth during the time period you're being crowded in by the cares and worries of this world. So you were a Christian, but you got choked. Okay, so now the NIV on 2 Corinthians 6, verse 1. In Greek, it says, to not have received grace for nothing. The Greek aorist infinitive, giving it a past quality in Greek. Then NIV instead uses present tense, quote, not to receive grace in vain. Thus, the NIV eliminates the Greek sense of a past receipt of grace. So to have received grace in the past for nothing makes sense, meaning it went to nothing. But putting it in the present, it takes away this idea that you could have had grace and lost grace, which they don't want to convey. All right, then the RVA 1909, 1960, the same passage. The 2 Corinthians 6:1, the RVA uses present subjunctive, no se recibáis en vano la gracia. You might not receive the grace of God for nothing. While not precisely accurate, it has sufficient ambiguity that it does not directly conflict with the Greek. Okay, now we're looking at the KJV and NIV when they both make the same error. Okay, so that was just the NIV mistakes. The KJV was not wrong in the prior ones. Now the KJV is going to be participating in the same wrong. 1 Timothy 3:6 says, a recent convert, if made a pastor, might become puffed up and then fall under the same krima, Greek for condemnation, as the devil. But the NIV changes it to judgment. This is more abstract and can be misunderstood to be saying the convert pastor will face the judgment seat just like the devil, rather than being condemned to damnation. And I put it over here because the KJV has the same opinion. Then over here in the RVA, 1960, 1 Timothy 3:6, and the RVA translates this as condemnation of the devil, condenación, thus conveying properly Paul's threat of damnation. Okay, so see, you can change the word so that you don't see this, and the word judgment doesn't convey enough. It should be the judgment, the condenación. Condemnation should have been the right word. Okay, so here's the same error on the KJV and NIV side. John 15, verses 2 to 3. In the Greek, uses two related Greek words that we start out clean, an adjective, but as we keep producing fruit, God, quote, keeps cleaning us, a verb form, thus our salvation by forgiveness, clean, adjective, must continue as we grow, cleaning us. The KJV and NIV translate the adjective clean, but change God's action, the verb, to purges, or prunes, thus obscuring the Greek original intent. So there's this idea that you would keep, so you start out clean and God's going to keep cleaning you, but you must continue to keep growing to have God keep cleaning you. So anyway, the word purges or prune really obscures that original message about the cleaning process is an ongoing one. It's a continuous process. Anyway, what about the RVA? It has it correct. John 15, verses 2 to 3, the RVA uses an adjective limpios for the current condition of the apostles and limpiará for their future needs. See, exactly what the Greek is saying. Thus, salvation is an identical process from start to finish. It doesn't change into, something about purging and all that. It's clean, 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 clean. God keeps you clean, but you have to keep growing, 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 growing. The Greek meaning is easily preserved by using a related adjective and verb, and the RVA alone followed pattern of literal translation. Okay, so again, these are the errors that KJV and the NIV both share. In John 15, 1-6, Jesus warns those who fail to meno in him or the vine. The Greek verb meno has two primary meanings: to stay or continue in one place. This is obscured in the KJV and NIV by translating it as abides, that's the KJV, and as remains in the NIV. Well, what's the correct way of doing it? In John 15, 1-6, the Greek word meno is correctly translated in RVA by the word permanecer, which means to stay in Spanish. So in other words, instead of saying the word stay, which is the actual meaning, or continue in one place if you want, they used vague words on the other side. It's obscuring what's going on here. You're abiding, remaining. Just say the word stay. You stay in the vine. You don't depart from the vine. So that's how the RVA is superior again, and more literal, more following the actual words, what they mean in Greek. Okay, so this is another error in the KJV and the NIV that is done right in the RVA. So John 15:6, the KJV and NIV both say the unproductive branch is, quote, thrown away and cast forth, but then neither translates to the next Greek word outside that appears in all Greek texts. So in other words, Jesus says when you're unproductive, you'll be thrown away outside. You'll be cast forth outside. And that has all the imagery we know from Book of Revelation, that you're with the lost. Okay, so this is a message of insecurity. If you are, not producing fruit, you're going to end up in the lost category. That's what the message is, but you can't see that. So anyway, but then neither translates the next Greek word outside that appears in all Greek texts. Jesus then says these outside are to be burned. So it's exactly the same imagery in Revelation. This is the only time in the KJV and NIV that this Greek word for outside is not translated at all. So I checked. Is there any example where they never translated the word outside? Only here. And what's the reason? To mislead you. There's no reason otherwise. There's no reason. Okay, let's go over to the RVA. Does it get it right? John 15:6. In the RVA, the Reina Valera, matches the Greek, translating outside afuera into the phrase será echado fuera, to be burned. The RVA thus lets us see this link to Revelation 22:15. That's what I was thinking of. Where outside are all the evildoers who will be burned in the lake of fire. So that's what so the message about that vine. If you don't have that word outside, you might not realize Jesus is going to repeat the same thing in Revelation 22:15. You won't link them up. You're going to think, oh, I'm eternally saved. No, Jesus is telling you you're not if you don't keep producing fruit. Okay, so here's a couple of other errors in the KJV and NIV, or a error. In John 6:39, in Greek says it, quote, keeps on being God's wish. This is the Greek. It keeps on being God's wish or will, could be either one, present tense, that I should or might, it's not basically, have raised and lost none that he has given me, using the subjunctive aorist active for the verb to raise or to lose. The Greek verb tense ending for lose and raise, however, is identical to the future active. How do you decide which is which? Subjunctive is clearly intended because the sentence begins with expression of desire or wish. So this is how you know how to translate the Greek tenses when there's an ambiguity. It could be one of two tenses. If it starts with wish or will, it's then in the subjunctive tense that's following. Yet the KJV and NIV prefer finding a future destiny. So they're going to do it. They're going to disregard the fact that the rule is if the expression is a wish or desire in the beginning part, it has to be subjunctive in the ending part. And they're going to say, no. We're going to make this. We're going to ignore that rule. We're going to make it you shall be saved. God's going to keep you forever. Here's where it's correct in the RVA. John 6:39, RVA accepts the tense must be subjunctive in Greek rather than future, using Spanish present subjunctive no pierda and lo resucite. Note John 3:16 is more proof that Greek subjunctive is intended because there the Greek subjunctive tense is clear and expresses similar statements, may not perish but have everlasting life. So there's another way of knowing. You just don't always look at one verse. You look at the parallel verses. So John 3:16 clearly uses subjunctive in a tense that can't have any ambiguity. or a Greek ending that can't be future or subjunctive. Okay, so now I'm going to have a slide called "No one is perfect," an error in all three. So we're going to find out there's a mistake in all these three texts, unfortunately. All right, so there's an erroneous addition in 1 John 3:5. And by the way, this is just doing regular Bible study reading and studying, having no purpose to ever do the kind of research you see I'm doing now. I'm a missionary. I got time on my hands. I'm starting reading the Bible and finding these things out. So I wasn't trying to find problems. I was trying to translate stuff and figure it out. So here we go. KJV. And you know that he has manifested and you know that he was manifested to take away our sins, KJV, NIV. But you know that he appeared so that he might take away our sin, NIV. And even the RVA has it wrong. Nuestros pecados, wrong. Man Vulgate 375 says, ut peccata toleret, take away sin. Vincent, Volume 3, A Word Study, confirms that no Greek text has the words our. It simply is sin. There you go. They all three made a mistake. I don't know how, but they did. I presumably it was maybe Erasmus picked up something, and you got to realize people were hand doing these things and they didn't have computers or the internet, so you have to give them a little grace. So maybe Erasmus is the cause of this in his 1522 edition. Maybe that's what caused it. Okay, and at that time I was doing all these studies. I started to like the American Standard Version. I still do. So let's see if we can find an English Bible as faithful to the Greek as Reina Valera is in Spanish. So I tested out the Bible I was using at that time a lot. So I scored it. The ASV scored 6.5 in the 9 verses that the RVA is uniquely correct versus the NIV KJV. So that's pretty good, meaning NIV KJV has it wrong, but the ASV 9 times compared to the RVA and the Greek, and the ASV scored 6.5. That's huge percentage correct. Then the last paragraph there is ASV is correct on one verse where the RVA itself is an error, along with the NIV KJV. That's 1 John 3:5, take away sin. So that really means the ASV was paying a lot more attention to its job than the NIV, KJV, or even sometimes the RVA. So I did a little bit of comparison between the ASV, American Standard, and the RVA, the Reina Valera. So Ephesians 2:8-9, they have yeah. So the ASV has it, you're saved by faith, not works. Okay, so ASV is on the left, RVA is on the right. I can now see. Okay, but in the RVA it's correct, and it's a present tense. You are being saved by faith, not works. So that's kind of I think that's actually an important distinction. Not that I'm trying to find a way that Paul is saying what's true. It's just simply we're not translating him fairly. So if he's not as heretical as he sounds, you would use the RVA version. You are being saved by faith. So it's an ongoing process rather than something that you did one time in the past and you're done, which the way it's translated in the ASV does convey the idea that it was just a one-time thing, saved. Actually uses a past tense when it's a present tense. Okay, ASV does John 3:16. So what's 3:16 should not perish is correct. Oh, so that was correct in the ASV, and the RVA is correct. Oh, I'm doing a test here. So they're both correct. Luke 8:14, bring no fruit to perfection. It's close, but the RVA is absolutely correct. So basically, it's one wrong, one totally correct, and one slightly better on the RVA. So I'm showing you these are very closely parallel. Well done. Okay, so let's continue. I haven't really looked at these slides for years. So John 6:39 should lose nothing but should raise it up at the last day. Both are correct. So the RVA on the other side uses subjunctive. It's correct. So that's another positive. 2 Corinthians 6:1, you receive not grace of God in vain. This is an error. The RVA is closer. And that's an error in the ASV, but it's closer in the RVA, the Reina Valera. 1 Timothy 3:6, fall into the condemnation of the devil. It was correct. Remember, the condenación in RVA is correct. So this is more examples of where two of these three, the RVA and the ASV, are both correct, but in one of them, 2 Corinthians, the ASV is clearly wrong and the RVA is closer. Okay, this continues. ASV compared to RVA. Almost done. I have one more slide after this. John 15, 2-3, cleanseth, clean is a correct parallel verb to adjective, and the RVA has that correct. Both had it correct. John 15:6, cast forth. There's the error. They didn't use the word outside. RVA correctly refers to outside. Next, 1 John 3:5, take away sins. That's correct on the ASV. And this is where the RVA incorrectly adds the word our. So see, there's one superior for ASV, and the RVA had something wrong. And then finally, John 15:6, abide in me. That's a weak translation, and the RVA has it correct. It's stay, permanecer. So the conclusions I reached, of course, it's not exhaustive. It's a sample of 10 passages and then some extra stuff I looked at. The Reina Valera is a superior translation to both the NIV and the KJV. 2. The best English translation is the American Standard of 1901, almost equal to the Reina Valera and sometimes more accurate than the Reina Valera. How about that? And you can test this yourself. For example, go to this is just another verse to take a look at. It's crazy translations. Hebrews 6:4-6. Okay, this was a center of huge controversy between the Calvinists and the Arminians. This whole passage. So the KJV is written by who? The Calvinists. So what are they going to do? They're going to add a word to make it seem that it doesn't say what it really says. The KJV and NIV both add an if, but both ASV and RVA omit it. The word ei, or if in Greek, is not present in any Greek text. So by putting the word if in there, they took away the certainty of what the verse was actually saying, which supported Arminius' position. And I'm not going to go through the whole details of this. So basically, what do you have? You have people who are willing to do what? Misrepresent what's in Scripture. Too bad for us. But anyway, they're wrong, and the RVA, I'm pretty sure, is right on that one. And the RVA admits it. See, they don't have that if. So you can see the honest translations versus the dishonest translations. And I don't mind saying that because these are dishonest. Now, the NIV will say, well, we're relying upon the KJV. They omitted it. They added it. So maybe it's implied. I'm sure they have a rationalization for everything, right? So I'm not saying they haven't sat down and go, why are we adding this word? They've thought about it. They've deliberately done this. But my view is any translation that adds words that do not bracket them are dishonest. And this is an additional word. So if you're willing to defend it, put it in brackets so I can look it up, maybe put a footnote while you're adding the word if. Say, it's implied, it's in contextual, blah, 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 blah. And you're saying NIV and KJV, you're saying it had nothing to do with the controversy over Arminius, who was claiming that this passage meant you could lose your salvation. Because it actually says that. If you take out the word if, you would see what I'm saying. So anyway, this is just, it just reminds me, just triggered a whole memory of that whole controversy. Just so many despicable things going on in the past that our forefathers were not very genuine about, and we have to live with them. We have to undo these mistakes. Okay, God bless everybody. Hope this helped you. Ciao. Bye.